ASMR, the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb. The story of the discovery of King Tutankhamun's tomb is one of the most remarkable in the history of archaeology. It involves rivalry between nations, punch-ups with French tourists, an ancient curse, and the wider rediscovery of perhaps one of the most fascinating and extraordinary periods in world history. First, the background. Tutankhamun ruled as Pharaoh of Egypt from about 1333 until his death at only 19 years of age in 1324 BC. He belonged to the 18th dynasty of pharaohs during the New Kingdom period, a time of immense wealth, power, and cultural achievement, the golden age of Egyptian civilization. The pharaohs of the 18th dynasty, especially Tutankhamun's grandfather, Amenhotep III, displayed their power by building enormous monuments dedicated to themselves, to their military achievements, and of course, to the gods whom they themselves embodied on earth. For Egyptian society was dominated by religious worship, in particular by the cult of Amun, the creator deity and champion of the poor and less fortunate. So too the priest class of Amun, who as guardians of the souls of the ruling family and people of Egypt, held enormous spiritual and political power. This is why what happened next is so compelling. The very foundations of the richest and most powerful society in the ancient world were about to implode. Amenhotep III died in 1353. After succeeding his father as pharaoh, Amenhotep IV instigated a top-down revolution in spiritual worship. He personally abandoned Amun and henceforth devoted himself solely to the worship of the Aten, known as the disk of the sun. He changed his name from Amenhotep, meaning Amun is satisfied, to Akhenaten, meaning something like in service of the Aten. He moved the national capital north to Amarna and built a royal complex complete with open-air temples, so as better able to worship the sun disk. Most remarkable of all, he claimed Aten as the only god in existence and prohibited the worship of Amun. It is difficult to overstate the level of national trauma this would have inflicted upon the people of Egypt. The very purpose and meaning of their entire existence was crushed. Their souls, as well as those of their children and ancestors, were now in jeopardy. Looking up at the new, huge statues of Akhenaten with his strangely elongated head, thin, weak arms and huge, rounded hips, even these a radical departure from the traditional, more masculine and more lifelike portraits of the earlier pharaohs, the people of Egypt would surely have been scared. And perhaps then also relieved when, upon the ascension of Akhenaten's young son, initially named Tutankhaten, later changed to Tutankhamun, meaning in the image of Amun, the slow process of restoring the old gods to their rightful place, of rescuing the souls of the people of Egypt from such terrifying peril began. The capital Amarna was abandoned, the rightful worship of Amun reinstated, the statues and temples dedicated to Amun repaired, the heresy at last forsaken. But more importantly for our story, Such was the hatred of the Akhenaten regime that later, when the military general Horemheb ascended the throne in 1319 BC, all memory of the Aten was eradicated, including that of Akhenaten, and crucially also of his son Tutankhamun. The entrances to their tombs covered shut, their names wiped from the king's list. So successful was the effort that in time all memory of their existence was lost. Even the robbers who plagued the tombs of the pharaohs and habitually stole the treasures buried alongside them, including even their mummified corpses, began to overlook them. Thus, Tutankhamun's body and riches were left undisturbed and forgotten.
Howard Carter, born in 1874, had made his way to join the British Archaeological Survey of Egypt, while still only 17 years old. He started out as an illustrator, and later gained experience on digs under the guidance of the brilliantly named British archaeologist, Flinders Petrie. Later, he is employed as the Inspector General of the Egyptian Antiquities Department, at that time under the control of the French colonial services. At the beginning of this video, we mentioned a punch-up. Well, it is Carter that provides it. The story is that a group of French tourists made their way out onto one of the archaeological sites Carter was in charge of. A general hullabaloo ensues between the tourists on one side and Carter and his Egyptian security guards on the other, and fists are thrown. Not good for a man employed by the French. And so he's out. He starts to hire himself out as a kind of consultant archaeologist, or learned man as they were called, to visiting British and American millionaires who come over and essentially buy the rights to take on the prime digging sites of ancient Egypt. One such is Theodore Davis, who over the ensuing years makes several discoveries in the Valley of the Kings, near the ancient capital of Thebes, the burial site of several New Kingdom pharaohs. By this time, more and more information has come to light regarding this strange period of worship of the Aten, and indeed of the heretical pharaoh Akhenaten and his son Tutankhamun. Howard Carter himself does a lot of work in Akhenaten's capital, Amarna. But still, no one knows where on earth Tutankhamun's tomb might be. There is an intense rivalry between the European colonial powers to find it. In 1912, a German expedition has already uncovered a portrait bust of Nefertiti, Akhenaten's wife, and shipped it back to Berlin. Hitler later becomes infatuated with it. But in general, there remains little progress. Theodore Davis eventually sells his concession to the English Lord Carnarvon, who employs Carter as his learned man to continue the exploration of the Valley of the Kings. Incidentally, the Earl's family seat is now the famous Highclere Castle, site of the TV series Downton Abbey. The First World War slows progress even further. It is unclear precisely what Carter is doing during these years, although there is a story that he was involved in the demolition of a rival German dig house in Thebes. Eventually, however, we do find both the Earl and Carter back in Egypt, resuming the hunt for Tutankhamun's tomb. But time and money at last begins to run dry, and by 1922, Lord Carnarvon tells Carter that they only have one more season together. And remarkably, with such jeopardy in place, it is during this last effort that Carter discovers a previously undisturbed staircase in the sand. Desperate, he waits for the Earl to come racing over from England, and together, in the darkness, a single candle lighting their way, they eventually make their way down the ancient staircase and find a tomb door intact and undisturbed. Peeking through the dim light, Carnarvon asks Carter what he can see. "I can see things. I can see wonderful things." The discovery of King Tutankhamun's tomb, of course, makes headlines all over the world. Such is the drama of these events, and the splendour of the artifacts found in the previously undisturbed and mostly unrobbed tomb, that Tutankhamun remains perhaps the best known of ancient Egypt's pharaohs. Once previously lost for all time, he lays now in a climate-controlled glass box inside his old tomb. But what of the infamous Pharaoh's curse? It began back in 1922, when a rival archaeologist, Arthur Weigel, a man who intensely disliked the amateur Lord Carnarvon and Howard Carter, covered the discovery as a journalist for the Daily Mail. The Earl had given exclusive interviews to the London Times, something which also irritated Weigel, who was later to remark of Carnarvon, "If he goes down the staircase in that spirit, I give him 6 weeks to live." And the Earl, true to form for this remarkable story, does indeed die shortly afterwards. Unnervingly, at the moment of his death, there is a power cut in his Cairo hospital, and back at Highclere, the maids are startled by the sound of his dog howling. What's more, the Earl dies from an infected mosquito bite to the cheek, mimicking, it was said, a scar later to be found on the face of Tutankhamun himself. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle found the story of the curse convincing, although, in fairness, he also believed in fairies. When Mussolini heard of Carnarvon's death, he had a gifted Egyptian mummy removed from the Palazzo Chigi in Rome.